Breaking news for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm your host, Chris Carter, here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. They have traded up and gotten Broderick Jones, the offensive tackle out of Georgia. If you've been following along here, if you're an everydayer here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, you know that Broderick Jones was my top offensive tackle in this draft class. It was also my prediction that they would trade up to get him. And here's the crazy part. They only lost the 4th round pick, which they can easily recoup by trading back in the 2nd round with the 32nd overall pick and maybe even get a better spot there. The Steelers make a huge move to get Broderick Jones. They're building the picket fence to protect Kenny Pickett. Now, let's talk about Broderick Jones a little more specifically now, because we know that he is the pick for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and this isn't speculation. One, Broderick Jones to me tests off the charts. Great. I think he's an awesome athlete. Fits a lot of the things that you need in an offensive lineman. He'll have quick feet. He's really aggressive. He can bully people in the run game, and that to me is a huge part of why they wanted him. But also, his biggest weaknesses are that I think sometimes he does a little too much. He's a little too aggressive with his hands, and sometimes that he misses with those, and that leads to some missed blocks in pass protection. But you know what Mike Tomlin's saying is all the time, I'd rather say whoa than sick 'em, because he knows that with Broderick Jones, and I think this is the demeanor that the Steelers are approaching this with. He knows with Broderick Jones that that if you're coaching him and your problem is you got to tell him, hey, don't be as aggressive here, be more refined, get the technique down. And then when you perfect the technique, then you can be more aggressive. To me, this is a home run of a pick for the Steelers, and only having to trade up 3 spots. And if you remember, with Alan Saunders, we explored this trade possibility on that show and saying that this could be the sweet spot at 14th overall. Omar Khan cooking for the Pittsburgh Steelers right now, in my opinion. He has now given them a young offensive tackle who I think is going to be a pillar player for this offensive line moving forward. I think immediately you put him up against Dan Moore Jr. You see how they do out in camp. If he doesn't start right away, that's fine. Kenny Pickett didn't either, but I think he will eventually be that guy at some point this year. I think that he's a top talent, and still, again, I think this really works for the Steelers, because for those who wanted Christian Gonzalez, who, by the way, is still on the board right now, for those who wanted Christian Gonzalez, this is pushing cornerbacks further and further down. We're going to see where Gonzalez gets taken. At this point in time, as I'm recording, the Jets are still on the clock at pick 15 with the Steelers right after the Steelers trade up. But I'm telling you, man, this was the move right here. They can still get a top-tier cornerback, a guy who can be a franchise cornerback with that 32nd overall pick, or even if they trade down from that a little bit in the 2nd round. Also wouldn't rule out of them trading up back into the 1st round if they really wanted to get a specific guy. Maybe they also want to get Joey Porter Jr. But for Broderick Jones, this is, to me, the ultimate pick here for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They wanted to improve in the trenches. They wanted to improve the offensive line. We've talked about for the last several years that, hey, we're seeing the lack of picks in the offensive line show up in the weaknesses on the team, not being able to run the ball efficiently. Najee Harris getting clogged at the line of scrimmage. Now you've seen progress with James Daniels. You've seen progress with Mason Cole. You've seen progress with Kevin Dotson and Chuks Okorafor. And you've seen a little bit with Dan Moore. But now with Broderick Jones, I think that it's going to be a lot of pressure to say, hey, Dan Moore, either sharpen up really quickly or that guy's taking your job. And again, it's not a slight on Dan Moore. I think that for a 4th round pick, he's done fine. But now you're talking about a 1st round pick and a top 15, a top 14 pick here for the Pittsburgh Steelers. All in all, to me, this is a big win for the Steelers front office as far as getting talent as it's graded in the draft. You never know how talent plays out, because there's always a chance that the player you pick's a bust. But to me, Broderick Jones, very high ceiling, solid floor, where I think that he'll be able to fix his problems rather quickly in the NFL draft. I think this is a huge win for the Steelers. Again, we'll get more details. We'll have a full episode of Locked On Steelers coming out before Friday, or leading into Friday. So we'll have my full evaluation, and we're going to keep looking in here at all the players that are falling down to 32 and what the Steelers might do. So stay tuned here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I hope everyone's enjoying the show out there, and I hope you're enjoying the NFL draft. I know I am. It always feels good when you predict a player to be the Steelers pick, and he is the Steelers picks. So I got one right there, and I'm happy to do that. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Carter Critiques. Follow this show, the Locked On Steelers podcast, on all your favorite podcasting platforms, and especially on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to this channel as we continue to cover the NFL draft for your Pittsburgh Steelers. Again, I'm your host, Chris Carter, for the Locked On Steelers podcast. Broderick Jones is the pick. Let me know what you think in the comments, and keep up to date with us. We'll keep you up to date with all the picks right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.